What happens when two of the most outspoken voices in political commentary sit across from each other with completely opposite views on free speech? The answer is an absolutely explosive exchange that had audiences at home picking sides within seconds. Bill Maher walked onto the View set ready to promote his latest stand-up special, but what he got instead was a debate that would dominate social media for days. Before we get into exactly how this all went down, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling me whose side you're on in this debate. Because trust me, you're going to have an opinion by the end of this video. The tension was palpable from the moment Bill took his seat at the table. Whoopi Goldberg had barely finished her introduction when Sunny Hostin jumped in with what seemed like a friendly question, but anyone who knows Sunny's style could tell there was an edge to it. "Bill, welcome back," Sunny began, leaning forward slightly. "You've made a career out of saying whatever you want, whenever you want. But don't you think in this climate, with the rise of hate speech and misinformation, there needs to be some responsibility attached to that freedom?" Bill didn't hesitate. "Sunny, I've been doing this for 30 years, and every single year someone tells me we're in a special climate that requires special restrictions. The answer is always no. Free speech doesn't have a thermostat that you turn up or down based on how comfortable people are." You could see Sunny wasn't satisfied with that answer. She pressed forward. "But we're not talking about comfort, Bill. We're talking about safety. When speech leads to violence, when it spreads lies that cost lives, don't we have an obligation to draw a line?" "Who's we?" Bill shot back immediately. "That's my question. Who gets to draw that line? You? Me? The government?" Because I promise you, Sunny, whoever you trust with that power today, you won't trust tomorrow when someone else is holding the pen. Joy Behar tried to step in to moderate, but Sunny raised her hand. "I'm not finished." "Bill, you can't just hide behind slippery slope arguments every time someone suggests maybe, just maybe, we shouldn't let people spread dangerous conspiracy theories on massive platforms." Bill laughed, but it wasn't a friendly laugh. "Hiding? Sunny, the slippery slope isn't an argument. It's a historical fact. Every single time a society decides it needs to protect people from bad ideas by banning them, it ends badly. Every time." "That's not true," Sunny countered, her voice rising slightly. "There are plenty of democracies with hate speech laws that function just fine. Better than fine, actually. They don't have the levels of extremism we have here." "Really?" Bill leaned back in his chair. "Define extremism, because I bet your definition and mine are very different. And that's exactly the problem. You think you're protecting people from dangerous ideas, but what you're really doing is deciding which ideas get to exist in public discourse." Sunny shook her head firmly. "No, I'm talking about actual hate speech, racism, anti-Semitism, calls for violence. Are you seriously arguing we should protect that?" "I'm arguing that the First Amendment already doesn't protect calls for violence," Bill replied. "That's settled law, imminent, lawless action. But what you're talking about goes way beyond that. You're talking about ideas you don't like, opinions that offend you, perspectives that challenge your worldview." "Don't tell me what I'm talking about," Sunny said sharply. "I'm a lawyer, Bill. I understand the distinction between speech and action. What I'm saying is that the lines we drew 50 years ago might not be adequate for a world where a lie can reach 1 billion people in 5 minutes. Bill nodded slowly. "Okay, so let's play this out. You want tech companies, or the government, or some coalition of experts to decide what's true and what's false, what's acceptable and what's not. Who chooses these experts, Sunny?" "People who actually know what they're talking about," Sunny responded. "Scientists, doctors, researchers, not comedians with podcasts who think their opinion on epidemiology matters." The audience reacted audibly to that one, and you could see Bill's expression sharpen. There it is. That's what this is really about. You don't trust people to figure things out for themselves. You think they need experts. which conveniently includes you, to tell them what to think. That is not what I said, Sunny protested. But Bill was on a roll now. It's exactly what you said. You just dressed it up in concern for public safety. But here's the thing, Sunny. The marketplace of ideas works. Bad ideas get exposed. Lies get debunked. It's messy. It's uncomfortable. But it's better than the alternative. Sunny leaned forward again, her voice steady but intense. The marketplace of ideas is a nice theory, Bill. But in practice, lies spread faster than truth. Conspiracy theories flourish. People die because they believed misinformation about vaccines or election fraud or whatever the crisis of the day is. At what point do we say, enough? Never, Bill said flatly. We never say enough. Because the moment you start limiting speech to protect people from bad ideas, you've already lost. You've admitted that your ideas can't compete. That truth needs protection from lies. And if that's the case, maybe your truth isn't as solid as you think. Joy tried again to redirect, asking about Bill's upcoming special, but Sunny wasn't done. So in your world, Bill, there are no consequences for spreading lies? No accountability? Of course there are consequences, Bill replied. Social consequences, professional consequences. If you lie, people stop trusting you. If you spread conspiracy theories, you lose credibility. But those consequences come from society, from individuals making choices, not from some authority deciding what we're allowed to say. That's naive, Sunny said bluntly. People don't always make good choices. Sometimes they need protection from themselves. Bill's eyebrows shot up. Did you really just say that? People need protection from themselves? Sunny, do you hear yourself? That's the most elitist, condescending thing I've heard all week. And I watch cable news. The audience laughed, but Sunny didn't. Call it elitist if you want, Bill. But when people are drinking bleach because someone told them it cures disease, when they're storming government buildings because they believe an election was stolen, I think a little elite condescension might be warranted. Those are two very different things, Bill countered. One is clearly dangerous medical advice, which again isn't protected speech. The other is political speech, which absolutely is protected, whether you like the content or not. So you're fine with people believing elections are stolen? Sunny challenged. I'm fine with people being allowed to say it, Bill clarified. I'm not fine with it, but I don't get to ban things I'm not fine with. Neither do you. That's the whole point of freedom. Sunny crossed her arms. That sounds great in theory, Bill, but in practice, that freedom is being weaponized. It's being used to undermine democracy itself. No, Sunny, Bill said, his voice growing more intense. What undermines democracy is telling people they can't be trusted with information. What undermines democracy is a class of people who think they know better than everyone else deciding what's true. That's not protecting democracy, that's replacing it. The tension at the table was unmistakable now. What had started as a policy disagreement had become something more personal. Whoopi finally managed to interject, trying to bring some balance to the conversation. Okay, let's take a breath here. Bill, I think what Sunny is trying to say is that there's a difference between free speech and consequence-free speech. Right, Sunny? But before Sunny could answer, Bill jumped back in. See, that phrase right there? Consequence-free speech? That's a trick. Speech already has consequences. Always has. But when you say consequence-free speech, what you really mean is you want to add legal consequences, governmental consequences, censorship. Just call it what it is. Sunny's jaw tightened. I'm calling it accountability, Bill. Something you seem allergic to. I'm allergic to authoritarianism, Bill fired back. And that's what you're advocating for, whether you realize it or not. You want someone in power to decide what's acceptable discourse. You want gatekeepers. You want censors. Just own it. I want people to stop dying from misinformation, Sunny said, her voice rising. I want kids to stop being radicalized online. I want families to stop being torn apart by conspiracy theories. If that makes me authoritarian in your eyes, then fine. Bill shook his head. Sonny, those are real problems. I'm not denying that. But your solution creates a bigger problem. Because once you give someone the power to silence what you consider dangerous speech, they will inevitably use that power to silence speech you agree with. History is littered with examples. History is also littered with examples of unchecked speech leading to genocide. Sonny shot back. Rwanda, the Holocaust. These things didn't happen in a vacuum. They happened because hate speech was allowed to flourish until it became hate action. And in both those cases, Bill responded immediately. The perpetrators controlled the media. They controlled what people could say. They used censorship as a tool. You're literally making my argument for me. Sonny exhaled sharply. That's intellectually dishonest, Bill, and you know it. There's a difference between authoritarian state censorship and democratic societies setting reasonable limits on harmful speech. Is there, though? Bill challenged. Because, from where I'm sitting, you're arguing that speech you deem harmful should be limited by authority. The only difference is, you think your authority is more legitimate. But to someone living under it, censorship is censorship. Ana Navarro tried to add something about finding middle ground, but Sonny waved her off. She was locked in now. Bill, let me ask you something. If someone goes on your show and lies about a vaccine, and then people who watch your show decide not to vaccinate their kids based on that lie, and then those kids die from a preventable disease, do you bear any responsibility for that? Bill didn't flinch. Morally? Maybe. Legally? No. And that's the distinction that matters. Because if you make me legally responsible for every guest's opinion, I can't have guests anymore. I can't have conversations anymore. Everything becomes sanitized, pre-approved, neutered. So the answer is no responsibility whatsoever, Sonny said, her tone dripping with disappointment. As long as you get your interesting conversation, who cares about the consequences? That's not what I said, Bill protested. Don't put words in my mouth. I said legal responsibility. I absolutely feel moral responsibility for the platform I provide. That's why I challenge guests when they say things I think are wrong. That's why I have debates instead of echo chambers. But feeling responsible and being legally liable are completely different things. Sonny leaned back slightly, regrouping. Okay, let's talk about your show then. You have a platform. You choose who gets on that platform. That's curation. That's editorial control. So, you already believe in limits. You already make decisions about what speech gets amplified. Of course I do. Bill agreed. It's my show. That's private editorial control. That's completely different from government censorship or demanding that social media platforms ban everyone I disagree with. Why is it different? Sonny pressed. If you can decide who speaks on your platform, why can't Twitter or Facebook or YouTube decide who speaks on theirs? They can, Bill said emphatically. And they do. And I might not always agree with their decisions, but they're private companies. They can do what they want. What I have a problem with is when the government pressures them to censor, or when people like you demand they ban anyone who says something you don't like. Sonny's eyes flashed. People like me? What does that mean, Bill? It means people who think they have the moral authority to decide what everyone else should be allowed to hear. Bill clarified. It means people who wrap censorship in the language of safety and protection, but are really just trying to control the narrative. I'm trying to protect vulnerable people from harm, Sonny said firmly. If that's controlling the narrative to you, then I guess I'm guilty. Who decides who's vulnerable? Bill asked. Who decides what's harmful? Those are subjective judgments, Sonny. And when you give someone the power to make those judgments for everyone, you're creating a system that will absolutely be abused. Sonny shook her head. Not everything is subjective, Bill. Racism is harmful. Anti-Semitism is harmful. Transphobia is harmful. These aren't opinions, they're facts. Okay, But who defines those terms? Bill pushed back. Because I've seen people called transphobic for saying biological sex is real. I've seen people called racist for criticizing Black Lives Matter as an organization. I've seen people called anti-Semitic for criticizing Israeli government policy. The terms get weaponized. So because the terms can be misused, we just don't use them at all? Sunny challenged. We just let actual bigotry slide because we're afraid of false accusations? No, Bill said carefully. We use the terms accurately. We have debates about what they mean. We counter bad speech with better speech. But we don't ban people from speaking because they used a word we don't like or expressed an opinion we find offensive. Sunny threw up her hands. So, in your perfect world, Bill, what happens to the targets of hate speech? The people who have to endure racism, sexism, homophobia on a daily basis? They just have to develop thicker skin? In my perfect world, Bill responded, people aren't racist, sexist, or homophobic. But we don't live in a perfect world. We live in a world where bad ideas exist. And the way we defeat bad ideas is not by banning them, it's by exposing them. It's by making better arguments. It's by proving them wrong. That's a nice luxury to have, Sunny said, her voice sharp. The luxury of treating bigotry as an intellectual exercise, an interesting debate topic. But for the people actually being targeted, it's not theoretical. It's their lived experience. Bill's expression grew more serious. I'm not treating it as theoretical, Sunny. I'm treating it as serious enough to get the solution right. And censorship is not the solution. It never has been. Every marginalized group that's ever fought for rights did it through speech, not through silencing their opponents. They also did it through laws, Sunny countered. Civil rights legislation, anti-discrimination laws, legal protections, not just better arguments in the marketplace of ideas. Yes, laws against discrimination in employment, housing, public accommodation. Bill agreed. Actions, not speech, that's the line. You can't discriminate in action. You absolutely can in speech. It's ugly, but it's necessary for freedom. Sunny's frustration was evident now. Necessary for whose freedom, Bill? Because the freedom to spew hatred limits the freedom of the people being targeted. Their freedom to exist safely in public spaces. Bill leaned forward, his tone becoming more measured, but no less intense. That's a false choice, Sunny. Speech doesn't limit anyone's freedom to exist. Actions do. If someone is harassing you, following you, threatening you, that's already illegal. We don't need new speech laws. We need to enforce the laws we have. But speech leads to action, Sunny insisted. You can't separate them. When you normalize hatred through speech, you make violent action more likely. Studies prove this. Studies also prove that suppressing speech drives it underground where it becomes more extreme, Bill countered. At least when it's out in the open, you can challenge it. You can refute it. You can show people why it's wrong. But when you ban it, you make martyrs. You make it forbidden fruit. You give it power. Sunny wasn't backing down. So we just wait for hatred to expose itself naturally? We just hope that reason will prevail while vulnerable communities suffer? That's not a strategy, Bill. That's negligence. No. What's negligent is thinking you can eliminate hatred by forcing it underground, Bill said. What's negligent is pretending that giving someone the power to censor will somehow only be used against the bad guys. Power doesn't work that way. It never has. Joy tried once more to lighten the mood, making a joke about how intense the conversation had gotten, but neither Bill nor Sunny was smiling. This had gone beyond a typical view debate. Sunny took a breath and shifted her approach. Let me ask you this, Bill. Do you think private companies have any obligation to society? Or is it just about profit and freedom with no responsibility attached? They have the same obligation anyone has, Bill replied, to not break the law. Beyond that, responsibility is voluntary, and many companies do take responsibility. But when you start mandating what they must allow or not allow on their platforms, you're turning private companies into arms of the government. That should scare you. What scares me, Sonny said slowly, is watching democracy crumble because we were too principled to protect it. What scares me is seeing families destroyed by conspiracy theories because we decided free speech was more important than truth. Bill caught the mocking tone on free speech. Did you just mock the concept of free speech? That's pretty revealing, Sonny. That tells me everything I need to know about where you really stand on this. I'm mocking the absolutist position, Sonny clarified. I'm mocking the idea that freedom of speech means freedom from consequences. I'm mocking the privileged position that treats dangerous lies as just another opinion worth respecting. There's that word again. Privileged, Bill said. That's the go-to, isn't it? Anyone who disagrees with you is privileged, and therefore their opinion doesn't count. It's a cheap way to avoid engaging with the actual argument. Sonny's voice rose. The actual argument is that your absolutism protects the powerful and harms the vulnerable. The actual argument is that in the real world, unlimited free speech doesn't create a marketplace of ideas. It creates a megaphone for whoever screams the loudest. And your solution is to give the government a bigger megaphone, Bill shot back. To give authorities the power to decide who gets heard. How is that better? How is that not infinitely more dangerous? Because in a democracy, we vote for those authorities, Sonny argued. We can hold them accountable. We can change them if they abuse their power. That's completely different from unaccountable tech billionaires making decisions that affect billions of lives. Bill laughed incredulously. Oh, so you trust the government more than tech companies? Have you met the government? Have you seen how they operate? You want those people deciding what's true and false? I want some mechanism for accountability, Sonny said. Right now we have none. Lies spread unchecked. Hatred flourishes. Democracy is being undermined in real time. And people like you sit back and say, well, that's the price of freedom. Well, maybe that price is too high. The audience was completely silent now, absorbed in the intensity of the exchange. Whoopi looked like she wanted to go to commercial, but couldn't find an opening. Bill's voice grew quieter, but more forceful. You know what the real price of freedom is, Sonny. It's tolerating things you hate. It's allowing people to be wrong. It's accepting that some people will never agree with you, and that's okay. The moment you decide that price is too high, the moment you decide freedom needs limits for safety, you've already lost it. Because someone else will come along and decide your speech is the dangerous kind. Your ideas are the ones that need limiting, and you'll have no leg to stand on because you set the precedent. Sonny met his gaze directly. I'm willing to take that risk if it means saving lives, if it means protecting democracy, if it means giving vulnerable people a chance to exist without being constantly attacked. You call that authoritarianism. I call it civilization. Civilization doesn't require censorship, Bill responded firmly. Every free society in history has proven that. What requires censorship is authoritarianism. What requires silencing dissent is tyranny. You can dress it up in concern for safety, in protection of democracy, in care for vulnerable people, but at the end of the day, you're arguing for giving someone power over what people can say. And that power will be abused. It always is. Sonny shook her head slowly. I fundamentally disagree with you, Bill. I think your position is naive, dangerous, and ignores the reality of how speech actually works in modern society. But I respect that you're consistent in it, even if I think you're consistently wrong. And I think you're well-intentioned, Bill replied, but paving a road to a place neither of us wants to end up. The desire to protect people from bad ideas is human. It's natural. But it's also the desire that has justified every act of censorship in history. The Inquisition thought they were protecting people's souls. Communist regimes thought they were protecting people from capitalist propaganda. It's always about protection. It's never about control. until suddenly it is. Sunny opened her mouth to respond, but Whoopi finally jumped in, thanking Bill for coming and announcing they needed to go to commercial. You could see Sunny wasn't finished, her expression showing she had more to say. Bill gave a small nod, acknowledging the conversation was ending, whether they wanted it to or not. As the show cut away, the final image was of Bill and Sunny still looking at each other across the table, the tension unresolved, the argument clearly something that could have continued for hours. What you just witnessed wasn't just a debate about free speech, it was a fundamental disagreement about what freedom actually means and what it costs. Two intelligent people with completely incompatible visions of how society should function, neither willing to concede an inch. So now I want to hear from you. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and drop a comment below answering this question: whose argument did you find more convincing? Bill's absolutist defense of free speech or Sunny's call for accountability and protection? Let me know in the comments.